ARC board meeting to order at 4:15. Can we please do a roll call
Absolutely. Chair Bluth,
here?
Vice Chair Hunter,
Present.
Committee Member Carter. Aye. Committee Member Ostavar,
Here.
Committee Member Polly. I'll mark him absent. Committee Member Schmidt has let us know she will be absent. And Committee Member Tregenza.
Here.
Staff members present are Principal Planner Riveri, Senior Associate Planner Schmidt, and myself, Recording Secretary Barrera.
Hey, it looks like we have the notes from the December 1st meeting and one other item on the consent agenda. Does anyone have any comments or issues they'd like to raise on the consent agenda? Maybe you can pass on, Erika, how people can get in touch with us?
Certainly. To join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. Since the meeting has started, you'll find the agenda under the Recent tab. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID. Today's webinar ID is 161-914-9563. If prompted for a participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions for using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To provide comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. Public commenters will be muted until it's their turn to speak. Please turn off the TV or computer speakers or go to another room while connected, as background noise interferes with the broadcast. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody? It doesn't look like it.
I just can't pull up the minutes from the agenda. It doesn't look like they were attached. Yeah.
The link didn't work for you?
Oh, the link's not working.
It's packet page 5. Do you have a copy of the packet?
No, I was just trying to pull it up on my phone and the link
Oh.
wasn't working on the
Oh,
software. I just wanted to make sure the minutes reflect that I entered the meeting last time late.
Is that what that shows?
They should.
I was there. I arrived at 4:10, I think.
no, they show her as late at 4:06 p.m.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
correct.
Yeah, I don't think you were able to vote on the minutes, right?
Yeah, I think we had done that at that point.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the last meeting. I'm sorry, I can't pull it up, so.
Okay.
So it looks like the 2 items on the consent agenda, do we need to vote for just both items at the same time? Or do we have to do them separately?
You can ask for a motion to make a vote on all the consent agenda,
Mhm.
or, but did we confirm that there's no one from the public that would like to?
Right, there's
Make
no
a
one
comment?
from the public, or there's no one on Zoom with their hands raised.
Okay. So you may proceed with the motion.
Well, do we have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
Should we do it? I'm sorry. Should we do it separately since I can't do the minutes, but I can do the second one?
That's fine.
Okay.
Good. Why don't we move first to approve the December 1 minutes from the ARC meeting?
Yeah, I move that we approve the minutes from the December 1st meeting of the ARC.
Okay, so we have Ed and Patrick making the second. Any further discussion?
I did have a similar issue where I couldn't pull the minutes up online.
Can we continue or?
Can we move them to the
do
next
we
meeting?
need to move to the next meeting?
We can.
Okay.
Do we need to take a vote on that or we can just, why
Yeah, vote to
Yes.
continue.
don't we drop that motion and make can we need to make a motion to continue?
Yeah.
Okay, can we maybe anybody have a motion to continue? move the minutes to the next meeting from December 1st?
Yeah, I'll move to move the December 1st minutes to the next meeting of the ARC.
I'll second that.
So Patrick makes a motion, Ed seconds. I don't think we have any discussion for that. Can we do a roll call for it?
Sure. Chair Bluth,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hunter,
Aye.
Committee Member Carter,
So can I vote on this, moving it?
moving it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
Okay, aye.
Committee Member Ostavar,
Aye.
Committee Member Polly, still absent. Committee Member Schmidt is also absent. Committee Member Tregenza.
Aye.
Okay, this motion carries with a vote of 5. It will be continued to the next ARC meeting.
The other item on the consent agenda is Castro Road Architecture Review Permit ARP 210119 for preliminary and final architectural review of 210 square foot, second story floor addition and new windows at an existing single family dwelling. Since it's on the consent agenda, do we have a motion to?
I have a question about this first, if I may. Is this the property or the application we looked at last meeting? Or is it,
This is a new application.
this is a new application? Does it need to come through on a regular process, or is a consent agenda appropriate for this?
Consent agenda is okay. If the committee wants a staff presentation, they can request it.
Any discussion?
What would qualify something to go through the consent agenda and not have a hearing?
I think that most projects can for ARC. Staff discretion really is whether we put it on a consent agenda. We felt that this was a pretty minor project.
Usually, it would be like an extension of a permit or something like that, not an actual project that we haven't seen. At least I've never seen that come on a consent agenda before.
Sure. I mean,
And I'm
that,
sure
that
it's, not that you're trying to slip a fast one on us or anything, but I just, it's kind of odd that we're not seeing a report on this. If
oh,
it was just saying they want another year on their permit because they haven't financing or whatever. I understand that, but this isn't actually a new project, so.
yeah, so we can give a presentation if you'd like. The staff report includes all the information about the project. It was published, so anybody could view it. The committee could review it and make an informed decision. If you'd like it to be pulled, I do have a presentation.
But we can't pull it and then put it on public appearance today. Would we then just make a
No, we
motion?
can.
Yeah, we can.
We can discuss it today.
Okay, all right, why don't we just move it to the public appearance?
Okay.
And Justin Polly
So-
just joined us.
Okay.
And so I'm assuming we don't need to take a vote on moving it to public appearance. We just will
No, I don't think so.
proceed with it there. So I have 2 public appearance items. Okay, do we are there any comments or issues that are not on the agenda that anybody would like to make? Do we have anybody online? It doesn't look like it.
No.
So seeing none, let's move to public, public appearance items. Why don't we consider the 301 Monterey Salinas Highway Architecture Review Permit, ARP 210127 preliminary and final architectural review for new outdoor pavilion and restroom. Does staff have a report for that?
Yes. All right, thank you, Chair. My name is Chris Schmidt. I'm a senior associate planner for the city, and I've been working with the applicant on this project. Yes, it is a review of a new pavilion structure, restroom, parking expansion.
I'm sorry,
landscaping.
Chris, it says that we're in a practice session.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, yeah, it says it on the screen.
Does
You
that
are
mean
in
it's not
practice
broadcasting?
session. Do we need to restart the whole thing?
What do we do?
Recording in progress.
Can we
We,
start?
we do
now
have
or
to restart.
Restart.
Yeah.
We're broadcasting the whole time.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, why don't you continue, Chris?
Okay. I'm glad it worked out. So the staff recommendation is that the ARC approves the architectural review and tree removal permit. Just some background information. We see the subject site. It's located next to Monterey Regional Airport, adjacent to the existing Calvary Monterey Church facility. And then on the left-hand side is the Monterey Motorsports Park structure. Anyway, just moving on, a little bit more background. So this is an interesting case where the project was vested in 2003. A use permit was approved for a 22,332 square foot sanctuary building with 1,047 seats, a 3,600 square foot youth classroom building, and a 221 stall parking lot. Only out of that permit, project has been phased. So out of that, the classroom building and part of that parking lot have been constructed to date. And I just wanted to show what that previous project looked like, so the ARC could understand that this project has really been scaled down. So this site plan shows the development area of the previously approved sanctuary building. And then I also have the floor plan on the right-hand side showing, it has a really a substantial amount of seating, and it's really kind of like almost like a theater is how I would relate it to this project. So moving on, here's the elevation, the front elevation on the top and side on the bottom. So moving on to the project today that you'll be reviewing. They've substantially reduced the project by about 10,000 square feet. It is now nearly 12,000 square feet. It's an outdoor pavilion structure. And then they would also be constructing an almost 700 square foot restroom building. 67 parking stalls would be added to the existing parking lot. 77 tree removals are proposed, with 90 replacement trees. Removal of habitat and new landscaping and habitat mitigation planting are proposed as well. So here you can see the site plan. If you remember, the previous design really went nearly all the way to the back of the property. And show that again. So you can also see the applicant has removed this parking lot from the proposal as well. And this shows the entire Calvary site. Here's the partial site plan, just the zoomed in version. I just wanted to highlight that's the location of the restroom structure highlighted with the yellow box there. And you can also see the additional 67 parking spaces on the left-hand side. Here's the floor plan of the structure. So it's similar to the previous structure, except it is open on three sides, which you'll see on the elevations and renderings. They're going to have kind of tiered seating areas, and then at the base, one large assembly seating area with a stage at the rear. The hatch areas that surround would be turf. And then here's that front elevation. So as I said, these open areas with the X's, those would be open, and you'll see that a little bit better with the renderings. Here's a side view from the east elevation, west elevation, and rear. So the rear, it opens at the back, I think, so they can bring stuff in from the rear or what have you. So here's the rendering. I think you can pretty clearly see that it's proposed to be an open air structure, and that was the goal of changing the design from an entirely enclosed building. I think that the church had considered something similar to the previous design, but really wanted since COVID to have a space that would be used, that's open air, and they currently do use that space for outdoor services. Here's another view. So it's kind of difficult to see, but you can see the basically the impact development impact area that's highlighted with the dash line there, and inside of that are the trees that are proposed for removal. And then here's the tree replacement plan. As I mentioned, 90 replacement trees would be planted kind of all over the site in the tree wells in the parking lot, adjacent to the proposed structures, and then within the tree wells of the new parking lot and adjacent to that lot. So as part of the use permit approval, this project did have to go through environmental review, and it required mitigation for the removal of the maritime chaparral and mixed live oak woodland habitat. So the project initially proposed these areas in crosshatch as the mitigation planting areas. There's also some older biological studies in our records that say they could also potentially plant the mitigation plantings just adjacent on the other side of the church's site. There's some open space, so we're considering that area as well. The ARC doesn't need to consider the replanting area. I just want to make that clear. We'll work that out before we issue their building permits. So the ARC has to make 4 findings for approval for the architectural review permit. The first is that the proposed siding form, mass, and architectural style are appropriate. Staff has made this finding. It meets the development standards, including setbacks. It meets the height requirement that the project was entitled with the use permit. It's a smaller structure than the previously approved. The structure does not appear oversized. It leads to the open air on 3 sides really leads to it not looking too tall. It looks more like a shade structure. And the style is fairly simplistic, but still compatible with the existing buildings on site. The next finding is that the views, privacy, and living environment are not impaired. There are no viewer privacy impacts that have been identified. This site is located near the airport. There are no views for residences or other businesses that are impacted. And staff has found that the project does not unreasonably impair the views, privacy, or living environment. The next finding is project consistency with city plans and design guidelines. The project is consistent with the development standards, as I mentioned. It's also consistent with the airport land use compatibility plan and airport compatibility plan. Staff through the county have exempted it from review by the Airport Land Use Commission. And then lastly, the exterior finish colors, materials, and all other exterior features are appropriate. Staff has been able to make this finding. The landscaping and replacement trees are appropriate. The next finding, the last finding rather, is that the ARC has to make the finding that the trees prevent reasonable development, and their removal would allow reasonable development, basically. So the existing trees do prevent reasonable development. A removal of them would allow construction of this pavilion, restroom, and parking expansion. The project was vested for a much larger structure, and more trees would likely be required for removal to develop that larger structure and parking lot. And then I just wanted to add that this site does actually have a fairly limited parking relative to the scale of the structures on site. So I do think that the additional parking is needed. So that concludes, oh, excuse me, my last slide. So we do have a number of conditions of approval having to do with mitigation for the project. They'll have to have a biologist prepare a plant survey and mitigation planting plan, basically surveying the protected species, plant species on site, and then we'll have to replant those at a 2-to-1 ratio. The next is that dusky-footed wood rat nests have to be surveyed and dismantled with the help of a biologist. They'll have to prepare a California legless lizard survey, implement tree protection measures, and retain trees when possible. And then they will have to show a tree removal and protection map and also install protective fencing for trees to be retained. That does conclude my presentation. Staff recommendation is to approve the project. I'm available for questions and the applicant is available as well.
Thanks, Chris. Does anybody have any questions for Chris?
What's with this addition of 67 parking spaces, where does that bring the total up to?
I believe the total for the entire facility would be 336.
That's a lot of parking spaces.
It is. I agree. So this new structure is 12,000 square feet, and we estimated that the structure alone would require nearly 200. They also have 35,000 square foot of other facilities that I estimated the site would, I think, require even more than what's proposed. That being said, we don't consider what the existing on-site buildings would require, just what's been vested and what would be reasonable for this project.
Is there any a transit hub that goes to that facility, or?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think that there are, but I think they stop on Highway 68 very infrequently. Yeah, the main entrance to this site is on Highway 68.
Right. No, I'm familiar with the setting. I just hate to see that many, that much asphalt.
Yeah, is that, Patrick, were you done or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this is Justin Pauly.
Very good.
So are you saying that the amount of parking shown right now is basically just to meet the city's required number? Or are they going over and above what's required?
So it goes a little bit over what we calculated. I think the requirement in the staff report was a 190 total for that parking lot. I think that the parking lot with this project would be 220 or 216, I think it was. The difficult thing with this project is when the project was initially vested, the public record does not indicate what sort of parking calculation was used, why the number of parking spaces was proposed. The phasing of the project made it kind of difficult to say that, do portions of the existing lots count towards the existing structures? Today, if this project wasn't vested, we would require, I think, more parking.
And it's not within the city's purview to say if you're doing this large addition or intensification of your project, you need to provide us with calculations for the existing structures on the site?
So we do have a requirement that we calculate based on the various uses on site. The difference in this project is the moving from an indoor pavilion with a certain number of seats, which required a certain number of parking spaces, with different calculations. So we estimated that it would be similar, but yeah, I mean it is a reduction in size. There's certainly fewer parking spaces than originally proposed. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if
I think so. And remind me, and maybe you stated it at the beginning, what happened to that original plan? Was it just abandoned or rejected by the planning commission? I missed that. The larger plan.
Yeah, it was approved. It was in 2003. I don't know what has happened since as to why they haven't proceeded with that big design. I would ask that the applicant answer that question.
I have a couple
Yeah.
questions if Justin's done.
I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Trees, a lot of times on residential projects, when you take a tree or two down, you put a tree or two up. And they say, they require monitoring, and it's sort of a wink and a nod because that monitoring very rarely actually happens. In this case, a really significant number of trees are being removed and a really significant number of trees are being proposed to replace them. Is in the reports provided to the project, the mitigation or monitoring reports, does the city have a plan to make sure that these just aren't planted and sort of left out there to die? I mean, we're in this prolonged drought condition that we've been seeing quite frequently, very dry years. And if we just put a bunch of oaks out there, I mean, are they going to be irrigated? Are we actually going to replace the trees that are being taken out by giving those saplings a fighting chance to live? Is there any monitoring proposed? What's the proposal there?
That's a really great question. We do have a condition of approval that as I mentioned, requires the plant survey and mitigation planting plan. And so that's specific, part of that condition specifically writes, mitigation and planting plan shall include measures for proper habitat, replacement, non-native species removal, maintenance, and monitoring of the restoration/planting mitigation area. I think, if there needs to be emphasis on trees as well, that could be added to the condition.
Monitoring by who? Is it self-monitoring by the church, or?
So what we've done in the past is, and this is kind of the standard with having a mitigation plan prepared by a biologist, is they prepare performance standards. So after a period of X many years, 80% of habitat needs to survive. Otherwise, if less than, they'll have to plant more, etc. And I think that's often from a period of 3 to 5 years. It's really at the recommendation of the biologist.
Okay.
But we do work directly with that biologist over that period. The project next door, the Monterey Motorsport Park, I did have I think maybe semi-annual updates with the biologist for that project.
So you were getting feedback?
Right.
Okay, great.
Does the city forester have any jurisdiction over this project? Or is it just this biologist?
We typically ask the forester for their opinion on the replacement planting. Usually they just comment on the ratio or the ability of the site to have more plantings, with the concern that they don't want it often overplanted. I think in terms of looking at monitoring over time the habitat, we would often consult with the forester on the health of the plants if we for some reason disagreed with the biological report. Or right now we don't have a city forester, so I anticipate that we would consult with them in the future.
I just wanted to ask a couple questions related to the comments we got from the airport. And they suggested that the project go through airport land use, and the city says it's exempt. So who supersedes who?
So the comments, I think, actually, and I apologize. I meant to also recommend that the ARC adopt the recommended conditions. So thank you for mentioning that. I think the comments mentioned that if this project was generally smaller in scale, that they felt that it would be appropriate, unless I misunderstood.
I'm looking at it.
That being said, the county staff that works directly with the Airport Land Use Commission is the one that determines whether something needs to go before them, and we have correspondence from them stating that it did not.
I'm sorry, one more time.
Sure. Yeah. County staff works directly with the Airport Land Use
Uh-huh.
Commission, and we have consulted with them on whether or not it needs to go before the commission, and they said that it did not.
Okay, so will they notify then the airport of that?
I believe that they will. I don't know.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand how the processes work. If the airport says, we need you to go through the Land Use Commission, the county already said no. Who's got the bigger pen to tell us what to do?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay,
Well, the following up on Zoe's comment, the letter had at least two specific
I'm
issues.
reading it,
One was lighting. Another one was associated with noise.
Registering crane.
Right, which they were more or less saying that they thought it was going to be okay. But at the end of the letter, they recommended that before a building permit was issued, which I'm assuming is separate from what we're going to decide here at ARC, then that would need to go to the airport
the Land Use Commission.
land use commission
Okay.
for approval.
And the city says that they're exempt from it.
So
The county staff who works directly with the Airport Land Use Commission and the airport, the comprehensive land use plan for the airport
Okay,
specifically had advised city staff that it wasn't required. So we'll have to check on it again.
Okay.
I that is a surprise to me.
I just wanted to make sure the left hand's talking to the right hand.
Thank you.
That's all.
and the letter did specifically request at the end that
Okay.
an action be taken that before a building permit was issued, that they would be then sent a request for approval. So
And it
I think
seems,
there's a contradiction.
and it seems like the airport's request for lighting mitigation doesn't totally seem unreasonable to me. So just because of the hazards with the airplanes. And my other
Absolutely.
question is, if they have this huge outdoor structure right next to the airport, there's a lot of noise from the planes. And it's not very nice when you're trying to have Sunday service.
Sure.
I mean, we eat at Tarpe's and they're really loud. So that's my other question about all of this is outdoor structure is nice, but there is a lot of sound there. And I would be curious to hear from the applicant, their thoughts about that. And then maybe we can try to address some of the lighting issues as well. I think that's a reasonable request.
Okay. Yeah, and I did forward that letter to the applicant, and they did agree that they're supportive of those added conditions.
Okay.
I would like to clarify that, like Chris said, the county staff, they're the ones that determine whether a project needs to go before the Airport Land Use Commission. The airport district may make a request for the project to be reviewed, but
Mhm.
it's ultimately the county's decision whether it gets reviewed before the commission or not.
Okay, so what I was saying, although what I was saying is, I just want to make sure that the left hand's talking to the right hand. So if
Yeah.
your advice is that you've been told by the county, we don't need to do that, then make sure the county's also telling the airport district that that's what's going on too.
Yeah,
Just so everybody's on the same page. That's all.
yes, I
Well,
agree.
I'm assuming the city staff will get back to the letter that was sent that we received this afternoon with a reply. So,
Yes,
And I think the airport board is actually using that letter as making their request. Because it would appear that's what they're doing. They're not sort of insisting that it go to the Airport Land Use Commission. They're requesting that it go to the Land Use Commission.
I'm confused now.
Well, it says that's the language they use. They're not saying that it has to. In their letter, they're saying we request that it goes to the Airport Land Use Commission.
But what county staff has already said is they're exempt from it, so they don't need to.
Oh, but I thought the planner just said that someone can request, they can request it.
That's
Did I
right.
miss that?
Yeah,
maybe it's
so
not
the
required,
airport
but
district
they
staff
request.
can request it. The airport district staff and the county staff are not one and the same. So the county staff manages the commission. Airport staff operates the airport. So I think they can make a recommendation.
So they're not necessarily exempt if the airport district acts for it. Is what you're saying.
If the,
I think they can still deny it, but they haven't done that, as far as I understand it. They can deny the request, but the airport board can make the request, and I don't think the request has been denied.
I think the letter made recommendations and more or less said in the preamble that they didn't, that they recognized that there was already exempt, that there was an existing approval that limited their or constrained their ability to impact it, other than the request that they made on the lighting, which they had a specific, and then the noise, which just seemed, well, that, you know, that there will be noise and it just has to be part of the calculation. Well, does anybody else have any questions for Chris? Maybe we should move on and have the applicant do a presentation, then we can ask questions there as well.
I'm sorry to drag this out. I'm trying to understand if the county says that they're exempt from the Airport Land Use Commission, and then the airport requests it, there can be two different requests, and one, the county can say yes, and the county can say they're okay, and the airport district can say, no, you're not. You have to come to the Land Use Commission.
the airport staff can request it, but the county staff is the one that agendizes it.
So if county staff has already said that they're exempt, then the airport request is moot.
Right.
It's just the request. They don't have to do anything about it.
What would normally happen is they would, if they were to go before the Airport Land Use Commission, the project would be presented, it would be reviewed for consistency with the compatibility plan. And then they would recommend basically the conditions that have been requested by airport staff.
I'm just confused on the process, that's all. Maybe I'm the only one who's confused and I've completely.
No, I think I'm getting your confusion too, but I continue to think that the county has not said no to their request yet. They have simply made the request. And I don't believe that the county has said that it's exempt yet. Am I incorrect on that?
Yes,
Okay,
That's
so the
when
county has already stated that it's exempt.
right.
All right. So are they appealing that with this? Like, so what is the board doing when they say that they request it to be submitted if the county's already said it's exempt?
I would have to talk to airport staff. I don't know if this is a letter coming directly from the Airport Land Use Commission or just from the staff. So
We have a copy of the
It's
letter.
coming,
yeah,
yeah,
I
it's
think
coming
it's
from the
just from the
airport
staff. Yeah.
district.
But what you're saying is the Land Use Commission is the county and airport staff are separate from the Land Use Commission. So if the county said they're already fine, they're exempt, the airport district can make a separate request for them to go before the Land Use Commission, and they ostensibly would have to make that presentation.
I don't think the airport staff's request is binding.
No, so the county may not grant their request. They have the ability to just not.
The county can say no to the airport district.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
So their request is that it happens before a building permit is issued. So we'll contact them and we'll contact county staff and ask about the difference in opinion.
Sorry, that was really difficult
okay.
for me to get.
No worries. Okay, Chris, thank you very much. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
I did have a couple other questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, more questions?
They're really sort of follow-ups to the ones, the areas of discussion that have been, we've been having already, largely parking. I think the question relates, my question specifically is it's sort of related to parking studies. I mean, if, for instance, the parking lot currently gets typically a quarter full, I think there's a new calculation needs to be done there. So if we don't have that information, it's hard to justify an increase. So just requesting a little more information on the current parking uses. And then there's again discussion about the trees. It does seem like it's a significant number of trees. In other towns I've worked with, they require a pretty hefty fee for tree removal, or replacement in caliper. So that would indicate the number of trees that you need to replace based on it, because it looks like there are a number of really large trees on the site too. And so just understanding a little more about that discussion, how that happens, would be helpful. And I agreed, I think Justin was noting, this requirement to make sure the replacements are done in a fashion where they survive. We know that obviously open ground is not the same as a small tree pit in a bunch of asphalt. And so to that end also, I'm curious what the species are, if they're replacing the species in kind with the ones that are being removed. And additionally, I would appreciate actually a little more context on the structures that surround this proposed structure. Perhaps that's coming in the applicant's presentation. Additionally, I think it would be nice to understand a little bit of the background on how they arrived at this particular design. And that's it for my questions.
Okay, so I think I'll attempt to answer all of your questions and maybe lean on the applicant for maybe some of the later ones. But in terms of the requirement for replacement, I believe the city code allows up to a replacement of a 3-to-1 ratio. In the case of this project, the use permit that vested the project, I think the requirement was a 1-to-1. They've in this case provided more than a 1-to-1. They are replacing in kind. It's if I can read from the plan for you. So 6 15-gallon cypress trees, 37 15-gallon coast live oak, 47 5-gallon coast live oak. And so the coast live oak was the species that had to be mitigated for as part of the original environmental document. So that's the one that they've focused on. And this is largely an oak woodland habitat. In terms of, sorry, could you please remind me, you had a question about parking as well?
Parking was more follow-up on understanding the current uses. So essentially a parking study, getting at, if the parking lot is never full currently, then it seems hard to justify that much of an addition as well. But just wanting to understand a little more, has that been reviewed at all?
Yeah, so it's my understanding from the applicant that on days that they do have service, the parking lot overfills. They have parking off-site in that case. I would ask them to elaborate a little bit more on the regular use of the parking lots. And I think those were kind of the main two questions, correct?
Yes, I believe those are the main two. Hopefully the others, the applicant can give
Yeah.
some additional context on style and if other locations were reviewed or identified on site for possible location of the structure.
Any other questions for staff specifically? Otherwise, I think.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Architectural Review Committee. My name's Henry Brunke. I'm with Wald, Brunke and Dost Architects. And so I can give you a little background on the project. I've actually designed the sanctuary back in 1991 or 1992. It was originally a church. Calvary Chapel was doing services out of the Lighthouse Cinemas back in that time, and they were looking for a home, and they found Monterey, and they found this property, and from that time we developed the original sanctuary out there, which is about 4,500 square feet. We had some classroom space, which currently exists, which are underneath, and we had a small area for a administrative kind of and reception area as you come into the building. Over the years, the congregation has grown. and they've grown. And as a result, they've expanded. And if you go out there today, you'll see that there's been a series of expansions over time. Everything from a kind of an indoor cafe area so that people can come and they can get a coffee or a snack. There's outdoor space in front of the church where people can congregate. It's almost like a kind of a pre-function area. We've added more indoor space so that they can do other types of services and meetings. We've expanded the administrative office areas. We've added more classroom space for the kids. We've done outdoor play areas, and the project continues to develop over time. It's a very well-used facility, but it's also a very well-maintained facility. If you go out there, it's very clean. They do take good care of their environment, not only the built structure, but also the plants and the trees. And the question about tree replacement, yes, we would be replacing the trees, and we would be taking care of the trees, and we will be watering the trees as they establish. And so that is just how they do things at Calvary Chapel. So they're a great organization. They're a benefit to the community. And as I had mentioned, the facility has grown over time. And there has been a need for more sanctuary space. They've done certain things with being able to have more services to be able to stagger. But even with that, they have continued to grow. As you're aware, what this really is a design change. The project, as Chris had mentioned, was entitled in 2003. Progressively, we've followed through on the entitlement. And in fact, today, if we wanted to, we could go and build that 1,000 seat sanctuary out there. But the feeling is that with the changes in the times and with COVID and a lot of other things, that it really makes more sense to not only downscale, but create a more open environment. Right now, we project that there'll probably be around 700 seating areas within the covered pavilion. So we are actually going to have more people can come to a service right now in this outdoor area than they can in the sanctuary that currently exists. So we do anticipate that we are going to have a need for additional parking. We are putting in less parking than what's entitled currently. We're putting in less building than what's entitled. And as a result, we're actually reducing the number of tree removals than was originally contemplated. So it's a less impactful project, which is a good thing. Chris kind of alluded to that on the weekends, when there are services on Sunday, it does get a very, very full parking lot. It does overflow, and they do have people that manage the parking. And so there are members of the church that will go out there, and it's basically a parking program that they're developing. And they park off site. There's other facilities and businesses right along the frontage there that help with the church parking. But that's something that can't be relied upon in the future. And it is easier and better to be able to provide parking closer to where the parking is needed. So we are still going to need to, even with the additional 67 stalls, it's very likely we're still going to need to manage the parking in a very smart way. The question came up about the type of trees to be replaced, and the program is for coastal live oaks, which are the same as the species that are being removed. So we are going to be doing our tree replanting based upon that. That was a question. And then the question about the Airport Land Use Commission, which came up. This was something that we wanted to address before, and so we understood whether or not we would have to come back before them. The project was originally approved at a larger scale, And so we did bring this up with Joe Sidor, who is the representative from the county, the planner that actually manages the Airport Land Use Commission as far as providing the staff reports and providing guidance as to projects like this. And so we had a lot of correspondence. I believe John Bridges is also on the Zoom call. He's with Fenton and Keller. He's one of the members of the church. He was in the midst of these discussions, as well as Kim Cole and Chris. And so there was an email in August 4th this year to Chris. A lot of people were copied, including myself. And Joe mentions, Chris, I concur with your attached consistency determination prepared for the proposed redesign of Calvary Chapel. Additionally, since the original project and use permit have been vested, subsequent review by the ALUC will not be required. Best regards, Joe. So this is something we brought up, and the letter that you get from airport staff is actually dated on the December 15th. So that's kind of like not very long ago. So it is kind of a surprise to us that that staff would all of a sudden bring that up. But there are a couple conditions that they're requesting. We do concur with the airport staff request. We don't think that's a problem. We also have some conditions which are really kind of ongoing conditions from the original 2003 approval that are just being reinforced by staff. And that's part of some of the things that you're reviewing. Those conditions, we're fine with that. I think we've worked really closely with staff over the last several months to bring this forward. We're trying to do a structure, a question about architectural design. We're trying to do something that's simple, that's clean, that is going to be comfortable, that we're going to be able to, provide an environment that's going to be both comfortable from the inside with some shade protection, but also, if you notice, we also have some grassy areas that are going to be focused toward the sanctuary stage area. And those could be for some sort of, sitting on the lawn and looking and listening and seeing the service. So there was a lot of thought, a lot of input by the congregation on what they wanted. And we feel that we're really close. As far as, bringing it to the next step, obviously we would love to have your approval this evening. If there's anything that you can do to, with suggestions on how to make our project better, that would be great. But we do appreciate the hard work that staff has put into the project over the last few months to get us here today. And I would be happy to answer any additional questions. Hopefully I answered the questions that you guys brought up during your staff discussion. But if there's anything else, I'm here, as well as some other members of the congregation and the contractor that's going to be working on this, as well as one of the members of our team. We also have, as I mentioned, John Bridges with Fenton and Keller. He's on the Zoom call, and he might be able to give you a little more historic background on the zoning issues and things like that from 2003, if there's any questions about the existing entitlements. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Henry. Does the community have any questions for the applicant?
I just wanted to go back to my question about noise. With an open amphitheater like that, has anybody, I assume you've done the noise, you've sat out there and been like, wow, it'll be okay.
Yeah, actually, because of COVID, I'm calling it the COVID. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I
like that.
It's like being on the line.
Yeah.
They have had a lot of the services have been outside over the last 2 years, and so it hasn't been an issue as far as the noise. I'm sure there's times when there's times where you have to take a pause, but it doesn't seem to be an issue for the services themselves, and they are aware of that.
Excellent.
I've got just one question about parking again. I always imagine that the majority of these parking spaces are needed on Sundays. Is it just kind of that, is that kind of a 1 day a week is the major service? And there's probably other events, but that's the only day that you really need all those spaces.
Yeah, Sunday's the big day. They do have evening things, Bible study and other
Sure.
types of services and youth group type of activities that occur throughout the week. So it does stay busy there. But as far as like overflowing the parking lot, that does happen on Sundays.
Yeah. Thanks. I just, I understand, you have the right to build it, and it's just for 6 days of the week, it's a lot of asphalt just reflecting radiant heat back up into our atmosphere, and we're trying to get away from that kind of thing. So I wish there was another solution.
Yeah, and this is actually a reduction in parking than from the
Right.
original entitlement.
I understand.
Well, thank you very much.
Any
Yeah,
other committee questions though?
Yes, I was just a follow-up on the plans, because what I was asking for was just actually a little more context in both image and with kind of the existing site and plan. You mentioned that it fits with the original design, but I haven't seen images of that, and just unfortunately, because we haven't been doing field trips, I haven't seen this site personally. So that's something that feels like a bit of a gap for me to understand a little more the context of how this building fits with the existing structures or adjacent. And then additionally, you mentioned turf. Is that artificial or live turf?
Artificial.
And I think, yeah, that's really, oh, I had one other question, which was grading plan. It looks like you do have a number of grade changes that you'll be needing to make. Are you proposing that with site walls, which are typically fairly important to review and see as well?
The way that it's tiered is that it's tiered down as you get closer to the stage. And then where the stage is elevated. So the back part of the building actually does do some retaining, but that's retaining into the ground. So we don't have a whole series of, for example, stepped retaining walls behind the building or anything like that. It's basically integrated into the design of the project. So and then your question about the design itself, that the building right now, the structures that currently exist are fairly simple. They're cement plaster exteriors painted. They do have gable roofs. On this structure, we kind of looked at it as being something kind of unto itself in a way. We're not trying to put a big gable roof on it to match the rest of the facilities. We see this as almost like a special structure, like a gazebo would be if you had something in your backyard, for example. It's slightly different than what's there right now, but it still works in context with the design. So things like the plaster, the forms, the lines, many of those things are currently exist at the existing sanctuary, but we're not trying to replicate the detailing. The scale of this building is different also than the church, where the church has the gable roofs. It's got the wood bracketing underneath. We were looking at this as being maybe a little, it's separate and a little more, I would say, clean as far as the design goes. And so that's how we've come up with this concept.
Thank you. I did want to have one follow-up question regarding the site walls. Looking at the plan again, and the parking lot looks like it would be cutting into, I think, a significant amount of terrain there. Is that also going to be done without retaining walls?
We're cutting that back. We're not retaining. Yeah, we're just doing like a 2-to-1 slope from the back of the curb. Obviously with enough room to provide for drainage. But we're not designing retaining walls. to facilitate the grade change.
Okay, but then it is cutting back into more of that landscape, I guess, in the area that looked like it was zoned for rehabilitation.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee?
One here. I'm a bit surprised to hear that an approval granted in 2003 is still possible to build. I know that we're constantly up against expiration of permits and playing that game and getting extensions, and there's limits on extensions. You literally could pull that permit and build that original project from 2003 as it is right now?
Correct, yes.
And so to planning staff, there's no, planning approvals don't expire?
So it's my understanding that because this project had been phased, so portions of it have been constructed over time, the remaining portions of the project are still vested.
Okay.
Yeah, we've never stopped. You know, we're continuing to develop. So we're implementing the plan. It's obviously something that we couldn't do in a single development, but we're moving through the process and you know, working on each phase one at a time. This is really pretty much our last phase, and it is really something that now that we're here, we're looking at and just saying, you know, can we change the appearance and the function slightly so that we can move this last piece, get it done, and have that in place.
I'll just point out, it looks like John Bridges has his hand up, like he'd like to say something.
How many members of your church do you have?
How many members? I think John might have a better number than I do. Or Sam, do you know? About 1,000 members.
Would the commission like to move forward with public comment?
Would that
and-
be
and we-
where John could make his comment, or would he be part of the applicants?
He certainly can be. That's up to you, Chair. Yeah.
Sure, why don't we have, if John wants to make a comment, why don't we have that now as part of the applicant's discussion?
He just raised his hand.
Okay, and I'm here if you have any more questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Henry. John, do you want to provide us your comments?
Yes, I'm on my phone, which I've never done before. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I was unable to get in via computer for some odd reason. Thank you for entertaining the application, Henry. Great job. Thank you. Was going to weigh in and offer some additional thought regarding the airport question, if that remains. Sounds like it's been addressed fairly well by staff. And I can also address the vested nature of the prior approval, but that sounds like it's also been addressed adequately by staff. We're not changing the use permit. This is just design approval. And so I would be happy to expand on any of those explanations that have been offered, but they have been accurate and correct as they've been presented by staff.
Thanks, John. Does any of the committee members have any questions for John for clarification, or?
Good.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's please move on to public comment. Arika, could you please pass on a reminder for how the public can get in touch?
Sure. Once again, to join a Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link on the link or the phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864, then enter the webinar ID. Today's webinar ID is 161-914-9563. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. To provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. I currently see nobody with their hand raised on Zoom.
Okay, well, maybe if somebody does come on later, we can take that comment, but why don't we open it to committee comments, and Does anybody have any comments they'd like to make now? No? Okay, well then, does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 3001 Monterey Salinas Highway. Thank you. Architecture review permit ARP-21-0127 for preliminary and final architecture review with the conditions from the city and the conditions from the airport. Yeah.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second it.
You can second it, Ed.
You can.
Okay. So we have a motion by Zoe, seconded by Ed. Do we, Arika, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Chair Bluth,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hunter,
Aye.
Committee Member Carter,
Aye.
Committee Member Ostavar,
I apologize. Can you reread what we're voting on?
We're considering the permit. Just as it's
And
written,
with, just as it's written.
with the conditions from the city and the airport.
Correct.
Aye.
Committee Member Polly,
Aye.
Committee Member Tregenza.
Aye.
Okay, this motion carries with a vote of 6. The decision is appealable within 10 days to the Planning Commission. There are applications at the planning office or online.
Thank
Thank you.
Good luck with it. So the next item on the public section, a public appearance is now the item that we moved from the consent agenda, which is consider 8 Castro Road architectural review permit ARP 21-0119 for preliminary and final architectural review of a 210 square foot second story floor area additions and new windows for an existing single family dwelling. Chris, do you have a presentation for that?
I do. Thank you, Chair. Again, my name is Chris Schmidt. I'm a senior associate planner for the city of Monterey, and I've been working with the applicant and owner on this project. So the staff recommendation is to approve the architectural review permit. Here we see the location. It's on Castro. It's in between Castro and Aguajito. This is kind of over by the old Del Monte Golf Course area. So here you can see the site plan, and this is really more of a planimetric survey. On the left-hand side, you see, it's kind of, it's hard to read, but here's the site if you could see my cursor. And then on the right-hand side is kind of a zoomed in, it's just showing kind of the home in relation to the north property line and east property line. Here we see the existing floor plan and on the left and proposed floor plan on the right. You see here on the existing, you'll see this it's not crosshatch, but this red hatching here that shows the locations that would be basically enclosed. They're currently covered porches, and the applicant is just proposing to enclose them, making them livable space. So this again is the existing condition. This is the south front elevation. Here is the rear. So those are the 2 areas that would be proposed to be filled. And then this is the proposed project. This is the front of the home. They're just filling in this small portion here, adding a new window. And then likewise in the rear, they're filling in just under the eave, within the covered porch area, just add a little bit of floor area. In total, it is 210 square feet, which is a relatively small amount. It's technically a 2-story addition because it is above the garage, although The majority of the home is really 1 story. And then here's the side elevation, just a side by side showing the existing and proposed. So I did go over the findings in the previous approval, but I'll just say that staff was able to make the first finding that the proposed siding, form, mass, and architectural style are appropriate. The development meets the development standards, including setbacks. The massing is not oversized. These are small additions relative to the home. They would just be filling in existing covered space, so it's not any increase in lot coverage or anything like that. And the new additions would match the existing style. There are no view or privacy impacts that have been identified. Again, this is not any new massing or increase in height. There are no nearby views. That the nearest neighbor is really on the other side of quite a bit of landscaping and vegetation. And we did not receive any comments on this project. So staff was able to make this finding. The project is consistent with the general plan in that it supports a residential use. It's consistent with the development standards, as I've said, and the single family design guidelines. Again, it's really not adding a whole lot of massing to the home because there's already a roof structure there. And then likewise, the materials are appropriate because they are proposed to match the existing and they're compatible with the architecture of Monterey and this neighborhood. So that concludes my presentation. Staff recommends approval. The applicant is not here. Typically, when staff thinks that a project is generally benign and we put it on the consent agenda, we can give them that option to attend, but they don't always. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Does anybody from the committee have any questions for Chris?
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you giving the report. Are the new windows just in that area? They're not doing new windows in the whole house, and that they're going to actually then match the existing windows?
Yeah, there's actually, I think there was one new window that's not in the new floor area addition. It's where I've got my mouse. They're just replacing it with a brand new window. It would be the same style. You can see it here.
Got it.
And then likewise here, you can see this side by side. They're just shifting this window a little bit.
Oh, they're going to scooch it over. Okay.
Yeah. That's if we look at the floor plan, that's a new bedroom.
Got it.
Or rather an expanded bedroom. I'll say the bedroom's kind of in the same location.
Chris, can you go, I guess, forward a couple of slides where you can see one more, or one more? One more. Maybe that's not the one. Maybe it's anyway. What appears here in one of the things that there's a chimney on there, and one of the elevations is showing the side view of the project that it's not there anymore. There, this one here on the left side of it, it doesn't show the chimney, or is that or am I just looking at a different?
Oh no, that's not a chimney. It's that's a good eye though. That's actually, it's just showing the measurement and showing that there are notes there that show this is the area that's filled in. So that's not an actual chimney.
Oh, okay.
It's a really good question.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. So since the applicant's not here, why don't we move on to public comment? And I think they probably have the information from the last time you read it. So I don't see anybody. Do you, Rika?
No, there are no attendees.
Great. All right. Well, then why don't we, if somebody does come up, we can take that. But why don't we move on to committee discussion? Is there any discussion on this item?
It does look like there's a chimney in some of the pictures, though.
I can pull it back up.
Like I'm looking at the one in the staff report and it looks like there's one there. So if you go back, or I don't know which way, it was showing the
Yeah.
windows.
There is a chimney.
Is that the-
Yeah, but
Right here.
it's not being
It's
affected
not-
by, yeah,
It's not
it's
changing.
on the other side of the house.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that same chimney is not being relocated, and there's no new chimney.
Okay.
But I appreciate the attention to detail for new massing. It is. Thank you for asking the question.
Great, thanks. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the consent item number 3, 8 Castro Road ARP 210119.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
So that's Patrick making the motion and Zoe seconding it. Can we do a roll call vote, Erika?
Sure. Chair Bluth,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hunter,
Aye.
Committee Member Carter,
Aye.
Committee Member Ostavar,
Aye.
Committee Member Polly,
Aye.
Committee Member Tregenza,
Aye.
and Committee Member Schmidt's absent. So this motion carries with a vote of 6. The decision is appealable within 10 days to the Planning Commission. Applications are in the planning office or online.
Great. Does city staff have any reports for us?
Just a summary of the December 7th city council meeting. There was a first reading of an ordinance to prohibit metal detecting activities at the former Fort Ord. Second reading to adopt an ordinance amending the development agreement for Del Monte Beach community. And a resolution that was adopted to amend the downtown and lighthouse specific plans to allow ground floor residential uses in certain situations. And the January 5th ARC meeting is canceled, so you'll have a little bit of a longer holiday break.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Happy holidays to everybody. And we'll adjourn this meeting of the ARC at 5:32.